Right, so I've just finished watching this brief video of Jen Psaki from the other day. So let's talk about Afghanistan for a minute. Why did we go there? Now here's the thing. There is a politician from Minnesota who is an immigrant who probably cheated to get elected, who is a U.S. House of Representatives member for that state, who made a statement which was intentionally worded for a reason. And she got raked over the coals for saying it. But here's the thing. In saying it the way she said it wasn't to diminish. It was that when you talk about the topic, people's emotions flare up. Brains shut off. People get triggered. Have you ever had to speak around somebody's trigger before? You knew this person, if you said a certain thing or talked about a certain topic, they were going to do this little thing with their eyes, and then at any given point could just explode and verbally or physically assault you, having a meltdown because of some trauma or damage within them. The event that she spoke about was an incredibly traumatic event. It changed the course of everything. She said it the way she said it because she had another point to make. She didn't want to get embroiled in people going, oh, the flashbacks, my flashbacks. She just wanted to get to a point. I just want to get to a point. But to get to that point, I'm going to have to do the same thing. But here's the deal. When this U.S. representative said some people did a thing, and everybody got all up in arms and outraged, I can't believe that she would say it like that. She was talking about 19 people doing a thing with box cutters. And the people got all woo because trauma. But here's the thing. Did 19 people with box cutters really do a thing? Did they really? Did these Saudis with their Saudi prince leader do some of the most expert aeronautics ever, some of the most precise flying ever, being barely able to take off, certainly not able to land, only able to marginally control the plane? So when I say some people did a thing, or an event happened, or a thing like that, that's not what I'm talking about, because I don't believe that that happened like that. I don't know what the real truth is because I wasn't there. I have spoken directly with people who were there or claimed to have been there. I have heard a number of things about the origin of all footage on that day, coming from people who worked for the media, the only people who had cameras that day. Phones were not as advanced. Individual videographers were, dedicated amateurs and hobbyists. Someone who wanted to make films or whatever would have a camera that could film like that. Somebody who had a family might have a digital camera if they were good with money. But not everybody had one. The internet was not such a thing that we would go share videos. This was more, we're recording home video for memories. Or we're making small films for our friends to enjoy. So this day, this thing happened, and it was immensely traumatic. We've known since the 1960s that trauma can be used to soften the will of people, to make it easier to control a populace, especially when it comes to a trauma that becomes national tragedy. So the president said, "We know who did it." And he named a name and he blamed the blame. And he said the guy is hiding out with these people in this country and we're going to go there and get him. Except he had a tendency to hide out in the next country to the north, which was an ally, even though they're a military dictatorship. And not very free. We talk about our freedom. We enforce the freedom, but that country's not very free. And so we went and invaded the country to the south of that. Now, just as it happens, that country is directly to the east of another country that we have long talked about overthrowing, whose government we already helped overthrow once and helped plunge it into this dystopian, theocratic nightmare that it is today. And they talk about wanting to invade it, take it over, control the resources. Well, the country to the east of that country, to the south of the one that's our ally, where the guy that we're blaming it was actually at and where he was eventually captured, happens to also be where opium comes from, and apples. Although the apples grow all over the place these days, but opium really grows there. Opium is required to make opiates. You don't just mix a bunch of oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, etc. in various stages to get hydrocodone. You need an opiate-based molecule to begin with. So we invaded the place where the opiates come from. We've had an opiate addiction problem for decades now, haven't we? We invaded this country. They wrote a new law in this country to prevent future attacks, because they told us that 19 guys with box cutters did the thing with impossible aeronautics and planes doing things that in any other days, any other normal, regular circumstances, if physics was working normally as physics is supposed to consistently work and not randomly change. Because I don't think it does that. Then these planes would have just confettied and fallen apart because of the air resistance of sea level flight. Made out of very soft metal by comparison of the buildings that they hit. Much softer than what they hit. And from my own experiences, I take the rifle out and I shoot in the yard, right? And I went out and one day I shot some old U-joints. And these are solid steel. These are not the hollow greasable kind. These are solid cast steel universal joints, minus the bearings and caps. So these are just plus sign shaped, half-inch plus almost 3/4-inch thick metal. And I stood them up, and I lined them up, and I shot them. You want to know what happened with them? They fell back a little bit, but the soft lead bullet hitting the hardened steel U-joint, the energy transferred and it fell, but it confettied the bullet. So think about aluminum, hollow, tubular aluminum, plated together, not a single extruded piece, flying at speed into a building designed to withstand the impact of an airplane, with a solid steel core, a gargantuan infrastructure of a building, concrete over steel, with steel on the outside too. Shouldn't that do that? Why would it cut a hole through the building? Whatever, dude. It don't work like that. In special effects land, TV logic, too much movies, TV, and pop culture, people's brains are softened as well. When you watch commercial content. It has advertisements. The advertisements prime you for susceptibility to their suggestion. And quite irresponsibly, oftentimes, do not deprime after giving you the sales pitch. They don't close. And when they don't close, it leaves you open to suggestion. And then the program returns, and your open to suggestion mind accepts the TV logic. So then a few years later, we decided that this country to the west of the country to the west of the country that we invaded, which is to the south of where the guy we were after was at, also needed invaded because that guy had weapons of mass destruction. That guy one time tried to kill the current president's dad when he was president. Nepotism is bad. And and was ideologically opposed to the guy they were blaming for the original thing. And so we invaded both countries on either side. And meanwhile, we also talked the entire 20 years that have passed about trying to take over this country up here to the north of that country. But that never worked. We consistently failed there. Now, here's the other thing, though. The country that we did invade first had a long, long history of repelling other places. It would be a place they call the Graveyard of Empires. The Taliban, the religious goat-fucking nutjobs who dominate that area, are the descendants of the people that our government armed in that region to help fight out the occupying army of the USSR back in the day. The guy that we blamed that was hanging out with them was a guy that back in the 1980s, during the Cold War, against the Soviet Union, we funded and armed that dude. We trained him and his people. And at that time, back in those days, we actually sold weapons of mass destruction to the leader of the other country we invaded on the other side of the country we're really after. And then when we went in claiming he had the weapons, they were gone. Either they had already been used or they had been sold, but they were not there. And they said at that time that our intelligence community knew for a fact. The same intelligence community that said 19 guys with box cutters did the thing with the impossible aeronautics. They said that they had no idea, even though we later found out that they knew. And then here we are, withdrawing from a country. They had set the deadline like asshole douchebags so that our withdrawal, our final troops leaving this place, a full 20 years to the day. To the day of the initial attack that we blamed on a guy who we said was in this country, even though he turned out to be elsewhere. And further, many people recall that a politician from the country to the north, our ally of the country we invaded, who was eventually assassinated, who was the first female of her position ever in a very male-dominated country, spoke on television about the fact that the guy that we were blaming had already died in Pakistan several years before. And then eventually, several years after that, we were told a story that some amazing superhero soldiers went in, caught and captured the guy, but they didn't keep his body. Burial at sea means you put them in a trash bag and you dump them in the water and the fish eat them. You're going to tell me that we took the number one public enemy, terrorist, and dumped his corpse in the ocean when we were through with him. Come on, guys. Come on. You're supposed to bring it back. Autopsy, proof. This is actually him. He had body doubles. We knew this. Threw his ass in the ocean. So, based on that story, why were we in Afghanistan? Leave a comment below if you think you know why we were in Afghanistan. Pick from all those reasons. All those things that happened. But I'll tell you, the correct answer is not among them. A little bit about that country we were trying to invade and surround. But the reality is, the attack itself appears to have been funded by the country of origin of the guy we blamed, not the country where we thought he was hiding with the guys that we also funded and trained along with him back in the day. And we certainly didn't go after the country that actually had him in it because they were an ally. But the other country where he's from is actually also an ally, kind of. And he's a prince. Was a prince. Now the thing is, we go through all of this. Don't forget, people are traumatized. I've had to speak entirely without mentioning names. I know you know what I'm talking about by now. But I've done it this way so that as much as possible, I'm not saying a trigger word, saying a stop thought word, saying a thing that will cause someone to just shut down intellectually. Neoconservatives and neoliberals are the same team. They pretend to be on opposite sides. They have identical goals. It's not even same goals from different angles. They have the same goals. They pretend to be on different sides by running people for both parties. Their goal is perpetual war, which drives the economy in their favor because they already have money, because they're often inherited rich people or whatever, children of other corrupt politicians or business people, and these business people capitalize on the markets of the world as they fluctuate and collapse, etc. There are other people who do the same, including the funder of most of the candidates who we will, if we were to forensically analyze every single county in America for what happened last November, we would find that the people that this guy is funding have all gamed the system and or cheated to win. The end goal, I don't think, is an end goal. I don't think there is an end goal. I'm going to go over here for a second and quote from the Tao of Spock. Now, on this one here, I don't know if this is going to mirror or not. Madness has no purpose or reason, but it may have a goal. Now, a goal is not the same as an end. Goal would be secure resources. Goal would be attempt to set up a nation. Goal would be whatever the next step is. It does not have a reason. A reason is an end. A real end goal, a purpose. A madness has no purpose. It has no reason, but it may have a goal. At any given moment, a crazy person may have a thing that their mind tells them they need to do, and they try and do it. And it may be that the fact that they're crazy or perceived as, or the fact that if they're having a psychotic break, would mean that they are attempting to pursue a goal while being completely unaware of their surroundings or the actuality of their environment. They'd be like a robot bumping into a wall repeatedly. Madness has no purpose or reason, but it may have a goal. So the goal is to whatever the immediate thing, right? My goal so far on this one has been to not say the wrong thing, to shut someone down. But I have a reason and a purpose. The purpose is to elucidate. The reason is the truth. Why are we there? Short-term goals, but perpetuated. That's like saying, I want this to last forever on a moment that literally can't. That time in the swimming pool in the afternoon when the sun was great and that girl that you like was there and we just had fun in the beach ball and you know, what a day. I wish that could last forever, except your fingers would get pruny, you get dehydrated, eventually you've got to poop. Like, you can't stay in the pool literally forever, right? This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. But rational people understand that, would say, oh, I wish this could last forever. But anyways, got to get out, towel off with it. We have spent 20 years in a country banging our heads on a wall. For why? ¿Por qué? We were misled. We were traumatized, taken advantage of, and our consent was manufactured to invade other countries and to impose draconian surveillance state laws, including the beginning of behavior control laws, one of the parts of the law that was passed after the significant event, with its deceptive title, was that it became a federal crime, punishable by prison, to congregate for the specific purpose of discussing the overthrow of the government. Prior to that day and that year, it had been legal that you could just sit around and discuss. Maybe somebody should overthrow it. How would we do that? But now you cannot gather. And because of the nature of the surveillance state and its electronic apparatus, it's very, very difficult to actually meet with someone without being tracked. So it just makes it that much more difficult. In this day and age, people are conditioned to just blurt their business onto a cloud-stored social network for all to see, and especially for this electronic surveillance state apparatus to have carte blanche at reading, whether they admit it or not. If they're power mad, if they are just consistently have an insane belief, then they have no real purpose. They have no real reason. They have goals. Goals like retain power, gain power again, make some money, regardless of the expense, because madness without reason, without purpose, has no appreciation for consequences, except as the consequences benefit them. Or if you have stymied their attempt to achieve a goal, that they're only concerned with the consequences as pertains to your destruction for getting in the way. Sounds like a toddler. Sounds like crazy people. This is how they do. If you get in their way, they swat you. Don't forget, we all have, as rational, reasonable, paying attention people, a goal, a purpose. That is the transparency of our elections. What scandal surrounded the president who presided over that attack and that event on that day that got us into those two wars, which the next president added 5 more to? Places where things like what happened in Afghanistan happened in places like Libya, where there is now a slave trade. What was the primary scandal of the 2000 election? And the people that benefited from that scandal happening, made it to power, were almost certainly involved in that attack as an excuse to get us into the short-term goal of making a war that should never have happened try and last forever. Even though you're dehydrated, you're a pruny, and you need to shit. They did not intend to get out of the pool. Why are we in Afghanistan? Why were we ever in Afghanistan?